Alright, today we'll be cleaning a carburetor on a 1996 Yamaha Kodiak 400. We have the carburetor pulled off of the four-wheeler already. Here's where your throttle cable came in at, and obviously if we have it off of the four-wheeler, this cover has already been off. That is just 6 Phillips screws on this cover here. And this cable controls the butterfly that's in here and the slide that's right here. So this slide should be free. You should be able to turn this, and both of the slide and the butterfly should move. So make sure that that is free. We'll pull that cover off there, 6 Phillips screws, and we will flip that carburetor on its top here. Take out 4 Phillips screws here for this bottom bowl. Right here is your air fuel screw, and to adjust that, what you do is you put your flat screwdriver on it and you turn it all the way in, but count those turns when you turn it all the way in. So this one is just over 2, so you do half turn 1, half turn 2, half turn, quarter turn. So we've got quarter turn out, half, 1, half, 2. So that's 2 1/4. Here's your idle adjust, and essentially what is that's doing is pushing up on this butterfly here and creating more airflow, pushing more fuel through. So when you adjust your idle, all you're doing is turning this butterfly here. Alright, we'll pull that bowl off of here. Again, 4 Phillips screws. And we've got your float here. We've got your main jet here, your pilot jet, your needle valve here, where the fuel comes in here, goes to this needle valve, and when this carburetor is sitting up the way that it should, fuel will push this float up, shutting that needle valve so fuel can no longer get in there. If this needle valve is not adjusted properly, and adjust it by that little tab there, or if that needle is leaking, fuel will come out of the bowl through that tab there. And if you flip this over, fuel runs up into this port there and out of this. That's why it's a good idea to have a vent tube on this so that fuel isn't draining directly down into your motor. Alright, we've got the main jet here. We pull out the flat screw. It's got a brass washer down below it. You want to make sure when you hold this up to light that you can see through it. Now what we do is take GumOut jet spray carbon choke cleaner, spray through it. Make sure that you can see through it when you hold it up to light. Take compressed air, blow through it. That cleans any debris out that could possibly be in there. You want to make sure if you're tipping it up that this brass washer doesn't go anywhere. And do the same thing for the pilot jet in here. Now this pilot jet, you're going to want to make sure when you put your flat screwdriver in there that you use a fairly small one, and make sure it's seated before you turn it. If you turn it when it's not seated, you'll strip that brass material and you won't be able to get that jet out. And just take that and flip that up and your pilot jet will fall out there. Same thing, you want to be able to see through it. Now if you cannot see through it, what I did on this one, because it was gummed up, was soaked it in carb cleaner for a little while. Take a small fine piece of metal and run it through there until you can go all the way through. If you hold it up to light, you'll be able to see through it, and you want to be able to blow through it with compressed air and carb cleaner. Now to take your float off, I lay this carburetor sideways. You can see one side of this pin has a tab on it, one does not. So you want to punch it out this way, and you do this very carefully. Make sure you put your pick on the actual punch, and you don't need to hit it hard. Just push it out, and then be able to pull that pin out this way. Now you'll lift that needle up while you do it. There's your needle there. You want to make sure that it's not grooved at all on this needle. Make sure there's no debris in there. If it is, you can replace the needle and seat. Take out that Phillips screw, pull that seat out, replace the needle. You can get those, a lot of times your carb kit will come with those. So that is the float, the needle, and the pin there. Make sure there's no cracking on that float. Okay, now what we're going to do is flip this up, and we'll be able to pull this top cover off here. And this part of it isn't as crucial to have clean, but you also don't want it filthy dirty. Fuel doesn't run through this area. This is just where the slide and the butterfly mechanism is. So pull these three, make sure that this seals good so you don't get water and debris down into this area when it's running. And this cap here has probably never been off. Again, just make sure you don't break that seal. Pull that off of there. You can see that I've never been in this one before, and it's nice and clean. Make sure that slide moves freely. Make sure there's not a lot of debris down in there that's going to fall down into that slide area. Put that cap back on, 3 Phillips screws. Tighten them down. Again, this is an aluminum carburetor, so you don't have to tighten these down extremely hard, or you will strip that out. Next, we'll take the choke assembly off. And that you'll need a 14mm wrench. Take the 14mm wrench. Here's the choke assembly. Make sure it slides back and forth. If it does not, or even if it does, but you want to clean it, just loosen this 14mm up. Again, make sure your wrench is on there well before you start turning it. That way you don't strip that brass material. And this right here will spin that plunger, so you won't be able to just turn on this to pull this out. A little tricky how they have this down in here. Once you get it loose, you can use your fingers here and alright, that will pop out. There's an O-ring in there. You want to make sure that that's good. Slide this out, your plunger. Check that O-ring. Check this O-ring. Make sure that spring's working properly in there. And blow through that with compressed air and carb cleaner. And you can go ahead and put that back together. And we'll tighten that down again. It doesn't have to be super tight. That seal will do a good job of taking up some room there. And you're putting brass into aluminum. You never have to get that very tight. So we'll tighten that up with a wrench. And make sure this slides properly. We'll take and put it back together. Make sure your needle is on your float. Slide that down in there. Take your pin, run it back through. Now I do the same thing but in reverse here. And you wouldn't have to do that if that pin slid all the way, and I want to make sure that it does. I'm just going to take and I'm just going to tap on the end of that pin there just to make sure that that seats properly. These are aluminum tabs here, so they break off very easily, so make sure you don't put a lot of pressure on those. We'll put the main jet in. Tighten it down. Pilot jet goes in. Tighten that down, slide that plate on there. We'll take this bowl, set it right down on top. We want to make sure that this O-ring is good on the bottom of that bowl there. And that looks good, looks like it's going to seal. If you get a carb kit, it will include that O-ring. That is a carb clean on a